So as of June 12th, 2026, Elon Musk has officially been deemed the world's first trillionaire. And this came as a result of the debut of his aerospace company, SpaceX, on the stock market. And obviously, during a time where many Americans are facing mass layoffs, struggling to afford housing, food, gas prices, healthcare, and just the overall rising cost of living, of course, this is driving conversations about the moral implications. And while I personally agree that this is obviously all very unjust, I also think that this event serves as proof that the Trump administration is, in fact, making America great again. And I say that because, historically speaking, America was never intended to be great for the majority, but rather for the minority of wealthy white men, which leads me to believe that MAGA is, in fact, living up to its promise. Since the very inception of this country to the Gilded Age till now, America has always had a history of leaning towards oligarchies, which makes it clear that this event is simply a case of history repeating itself, which it tends to do. Since the 1700s, early American society operated as an oligarchy, where political and economic power was concentrated in the hands of wealthy white male property owners, as well as southern plantation owners and northern merchants. Since its inception, the American law was designed to serve white land-owning men. Everyone else, including poor whites, enslaved Africans, indigenous nations, women, and immigrants, were excluded, silenced, and subjugated. When Americans elected their first leader in 1789, only white male landowners were eligible to vote, despite making up only 6% of the population. And it was only during 1792 that some white men who didn't own property finally got the right to vote. And of course, the 1800s gave rise to the Gilded Age, which many believe that we are currently living through the second wave of. Here we see a familiar inequality in economic and political power. To put things into perspective, during 1897, the richest 4,000 families in the U.S., which represented less than 1% of the population, had as much wealth as the other 11 million families. And today, the 3 richest individuals in the country have as much wealth as the entire bottom half of the population. According to a New York Times analysis, 300 billionaires accounted for 19% of political contributions in the 2024 elections. The issue at hand is this: the unequal distribution of wealth that occurs under free market capitalism continuously undermines the democratic system of equal political rights. And there has been a broad consensus that the systems of both capitalism and democracy require massive reforms to prevent their conflict with one another. As a direct response to the severe economic inequality of the Gilded Age, a push for income tax began during that era. At the time, working-class citizens struggled with high living costs, while massive monopolies and industrialists accumulated fortunes, which sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? And as a response, the government soon began collecting federal income tax through the 16th Amendment in 1913. And this was an attempt to counter the heavy corporate monopolies at the time. And you can say that it did serve its purpose during that particular time, because income tax only affected the wealthiest 1% of the American population. But you guys, as I do further research on this topic, I personally can't help but wonder if this was simply another classic case of problem, reaction, solution. And maybe I'll do another video on that. Because fast forward to 2026, and working class Americans are being taxed on every single red penny they earn. But if you weren't aware, reportedly Tesla has paid absolutely $0 and 0 cents in federal income tax for the past 2 decades. And Tesla has earned $5.7 billion of pre-tax income in 2025 alone. But of course, Elon denies all allegations of any shady legal loopholes. So I say all of that to conclude this. America evidently has a tendency of succumbing to a pattern that seems to be woven into the country's very fabric and origins. Late-stage capitalism acts synonymously to a modern-day slave system, where the working class citizens carry out the majority of the labor for the scraps thrown to them by the elite class residing at the top of the pyramid, who funnel all of the wealth and exploit everyone beneath them. And unlike Americans during the Gilded Age, who were organized in fighting the oligarchs, many modern day Americans seem to be too busy fighting one another to focus on the bigger picture at hand.